Welcome back. This is Michael T. Shue with Michael T. Shue Studios again. One more thing that I wanted to show you. I believe if I get my calipers out here, that this particular set of bushings is actually a match to the tube size for this bushing. You can see they're very close. If I try to take this bushing and push it in here, it actually does slide in part way, but it hits some of the glue that's up in here, glue and paint. You can see how tightly that fits in there. That's why the benefit to these turning between centers bushings. There is another manufacturer out there that makes these. I'll try and get a link to it in the description. That makes them so that there's a through hole so that you can use it with a mandrel, but there's also a 60-degree taper so that you can use it between centers. And they're again the machining on them is much tighter spec and fits much more snugly in the tubes when you do them. So now I've got my live center and dead center set back up. Putting these back together. May have to make some adjustments here. Let's see. Yep. So this is an example of how you can use the stock bushings between centers for turning between centers. The only time that you cannot use the stock bushings for turning between centers is for 7mm blanks. And the reason being is that the bushings for the 7mm pins, the stock ones, don't have a second, it's one dimension the entire length of the bushing. It doesn't have the step down that the turning between centers bushings do. You can get turning between centers bushings for slimline pins and other 7mm pins that have the step down. They just actually taper down smaller than 7mm to fit inside the tube. They're actually, or no, I take that back. You just can't use them for mandrel. So the manufacturer that makes it with the through hole probably does not make them for 7mm pins. So now we are just going to turn this blank, actually almost bushing to bushing between these. I prefer bushing to bushing on these simply because I don't like the big bulges that some people do. So I'm actually going to leave this slightly proud of bushing to bushing so that I can actually use my calipers to determine if how close to the hardware I'm going to be, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes.
You can call me stupid, yes, you can call me sheep, you can say I'm lazy, you can say I'm weak. You think that using her would get to me, and if you're right then you're in trouble deep, 'cause I won't break, no I know I won't wait. You're in trouble deep. But when it comes to her, you better keep it.
Okay, as you can see, we've turned this blank around. I'm using my fingers to just be a filler gauge. I can feel that I'm proud of the bushings all the way around on both sides. I want to make sure that I'm proud of the bushings at this point. Not finished with the pin, obviously, haven't finished turning, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull the hardware for the pin. And I actually want to compare the size of the hardware with the outside of the pin here. So I'm going to use my calipers again. get a mic of the outside, which is right at 10 millimeters. And then I want to go to my bushing. Actually, I'm thinking this is wrong. Now, I'm not even sure how this kit goes together, so I need to look at that first and make sure which part of the hardware I need to be measuring. Okay, now I've had a chance to look at this kit and see which portions, and actually did a little bit of pre-assembly here, see which portion I actually needed to check. It's not 10 millimeters. Always know how the pin goes together. If you need to get the instructions out, do that. So you can see we're actually up closer to almost 12 millimeters, 11 and a half. So I can see that it slips over my bushings very easily. Not so much on this end though. Just barely slides. So this bushing may be a slightly tighter tolerance than this bushing, or I may have worn it away in the one pin that I turned with it. So what I need to do is I need to go down close to the bushings. I'll probably want to be slightly proud of the bushing on this end and real close to it on this end. And then I can check it again with my calipers if I want to. Some people actually just use calipers. They don't use the bushings. They use the bushings simply as a guide to get close, but they use their calipers for all the fine tuning. So I'm going to finish turning this blank now, and then we will start polishing it.
Don't you dare say a single word, or I will strike you where it feels. You think that using her would get to me, and if you're right then you're in trouble deep. 'Cause I won't break, no I know I won't wait. You're in trouble deep.
There's where I want to be. Okay, now you can see that I've moved my tailstock out of the way. I've covered the ways of my bed with some paper towels here just to keep some water off of it. I've got a small tin of just some soapy water here to act as a lubricant as I start polishing these. I'm actually, since this is entirely resin-based blank, I'm actually going to be using micro mesh, which is very fine sandpaper, 1500 all the way up to 12,000, and I actually cut strips off of these so I don't use the full 6x6 sheets that I buy. Cut them into 1-inch strips, that way I've got something easy to deal with. And actually you can just soak these in your water. You don't need to worry about it. These are cloth with very fine particles on it, and the particles are very they're oriented in a very precise manner compared to just standard sandpaper. There are a couple other alternatives out on the market. Again, one better than the other, I honestly don't know, not really worried about it. If for example my blank was in a much rougher state than this, I might want to go ahead and hit it with some 200, 300, maybe 600 grit sandpapers. Since this actually came out really nice and I don't see a lot of tool marks on it, I'm actually going to start right up with a micro mesh, and we're just going to polish it up very quickly. What you're going to notice is I will use the sheet of micro mesh with the lathe on. I will sand it, I will turn the lathe off, and then I will sand along the axis while spinning it by hand so that I can remove any sanding marks. That's all that it takes to do the sanding. You don't need to sit here and spend 5 minutes at it. And then I'm just going to progress on up through the different grits. Two quick hits, turn it off, sand along the length of the pen. You notice what I did right there was I ran my fingers along it. That was just to remove any abrasives from the earlier pieces. I could actually do the same thing with a paper towel if I wanted. It's up through 3,200 already, and now we're on to 4,000. At this point, I'm going to stop with the sanding lengthwise, and I'll just go through the papers as quick as I can.
I won't break, no, I know I won't wait. You're in trouble, D.
Now the water was mainly there to protect the sandpaper, not the blank. The blank is fine on its own. The sandpaper can be burned if you aren't careful and use it dry. So the water is there to protect the sandpaper. The last thing that you have to determine here is where you want your clip to go, whether it's going to be on the white end or if I want to turn it around and have it on this end. I think I'm going to go with the white end here, and you can see that half the time you can actually press these pins together with just your bare hands. I also use my drill press with a piece of wood in it to do this, but you can see most of the time they just slide in place with a little effort. And that is our finished pen. And I grab my Band-Aid. There we go. Polished and looking good. Now I'll just wipe it off and get rid of my fingerprints.